My name is Michael Brown, and I'm honored to be a member of the Leadership Council for 24/7, the People's Filibuster for Gun Safety. I'm deeply inspired by my dear friends and longtime colleagues, Alan Casey and John Bridgeland, and the entire 24/7 team that has put this remarkable platform together on an extraordinarily short notice at remarkable levels of excellence. I believe 24/7 is an incredibly important new platform, a new way of reaching our elected officials with words and stories and sentiments that they need to hear. When Lincoln was president, people could literally walk into the White House, knock on the door, and talk to the president. Until very recently, we as Americans could walk the halls of Congress. And on any day, you could see Boy Scouts and Girl Scout troops, school classes, people from every political persuasion knocking on the doors of members of Congress, handing over petitions and brochures, and sharing their concerns and priorities with elected officials and their staff members. But with the deep divisions that have engulfed our country and the violence of January 6th, Capitol Hill is in a near lockdown, and it's a tremendous loss to our democracy. That's why 24/7, the People's Filibuster, is so powerful and essential. It's provided a powerful platform for both those who have been touched directly by unspeakable gun violence, and for all of us who feel their pain and who live in fear for the lives of our children and our grandchildren. I salute all who have testified and those that have put this platform together, and I am very grateful to the philanthropists who are funding it. You have built an entirely new way to unlock the voices of America and show how much we have in common. For the past week, I've been riveted to my screen. The 24/7 testimony has been powerful, authentic, and deeply affecting, often bringing me to tears. These personal testimonies of a remarkable array of diverse Americans is exactly what our country, especially our leaders, need to hear, coming together in good faith to speak from their hearts about the need for change, the need for common sense gun safety reforms. I believe that if we provide an opportunity for Americans to reach across our many lines of difference and connect on a person-to-person basis and make a real human connection, real change can happen. That is what I've been witnessing around the clock during this remarkable week. By way of background, when I was 20 years old, I worked as a legislative aide to then Congressman Leon Panetta. Leon had a bill on national service, the idea of calling on Americans when they are young to serve their country and community in a domestic setting. Ever since Leon introduced me to the idea, I have felt that national service is the missing link in American democracy, the one institution that can make our democracy more responsive, more effective, and more just. And so I co-founded Cityyear with Alan Casey and others, and I've spent most of my life pursuing the idea that one day the most commonly asked question of a young person will be, where will you do your service year? I am convinced that if we had national service at scale, we would have a stronger democracy, in large part because Americans of very diverse backgrounds and beliefs would get to know each other and care deeply about each other. That's because it's hard to hate up close. In fact, the opposite happens. A bond of empathy develops when we engage directly with people who are different from us. Developing and cultivating that empathy is more important than ever. It's essential if we are to hold our democracy together and if we are to solve the American agony and tragedy of gun violence. So in the spirit of national empathy, of national unity, and the common good, it's in that spirit that I speak to you today about gun safety. Today, in the wake of yesterday's sweeping Supreme Court decision to expand Second Amendment protections, and at the same time, Congress passing the first bipartisan gun safety reform in 30 years, I am reminded that so much of the protection, and I would say overprotection, of gun ownership in America is tied to this, the Constitution, a document I believe deeply in. The Constitution is one of the greatest contributions America has made to the world, especially the Bill of Rights. Yet I'm concerned that every right guaranteed by the Bill of Rights is largely at risk because of the well-funded, overprotected, and frankly fear-mongering approach to the protection of just one of those rights, the Second Amendment's right to bear arms in service to a well-regulated militia. The framers of the Constitution certainly had no conception of the firepower that would be in the hands of Americans today. Literally 21st century weapons of war that can kill enormous numbers of people in seconds with semi-automatic triggers and high-capacity magazines. These are weapons that only belong in the hands of our military. There is no conceivable way our founders would have imagined these kinds of weapons when they wrote the Second Amendment. So yes, there is a right to bear arms. But for every right, there are balances. We have a right to free speech. It's so important it's embedded in the First Amendment to the Constitution. It is perhaps the most celebrated right as Americans. But no one has the right to cry fire in a crowded theater. Every right is subject to the tests of common sense, common decency, and a fair understanding of how the exercise of one right actually damages the exercise of another right. We are now dangerously close of having all of our other rights be essentially subjugated to one right. The First Amendment also protects our right to assemble. Yet when concert goers in Las Vegas wanted to gather for an evening of entertainment, 58 people are dead in a matter of minutes. What does it mean to have a right to assemble if we are shot down when we gather in a public space? The First Amendment also protects our right to worship as we choose. Yet in Pittsburgh, 11 people were killed in their synagogue, and in Charleston, 9 worshipers were killed in their church. What does it mean to have the right to worship as we choose if we can't sit safely in our pews? In America, every child has a right to an education. Yet in Columbine and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas high schools, and in elementary schools in Sandy Hook and Uvalde, and in too many other schools where our children should feel safe, our children have been massacred. Perhaps of all the testimony I heard this week, 4th grader named Ginny. Ginny talked about how she has thought a lot about how she would try to hide or escape from a gunman in every room of her school. She had the same plan for her French class. In the cafeteria, she would hide under the salad bar or behind a vending machine. In the gym, she would hide in the supply closet or a locker room. In her English class, it's back out the window, where she could envision herself using the jutting bricks on the outside of the building to climb down the side of the school to safety. "Isn't it crazy," said Ginny, "that I should even have to think about this stuff? No 10-year-old should have to worry about someone with a gun invading their school. We should be able to gather together without worry about being shot." Isn't it crazy indeed? What does it mean to have the right to an education when our children can no longer go to school thinking it's a safe place to be, and too many never come home? And how long can we, a supermajority of Americans, stand in horror and disbelief at the ways we've allowed one overprivileged right to damage all of our other rights? It's time to reclaim our personal safety and our well-being for ourselves, for our loved ones, and for our fellow Americans, and to do so on the basis of the first principles of our democracy. The Declaration of Independence announced to the world that we were starting a new country based on the new and powerful idea that, quote, "all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with the inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." But how can we say that we have inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness when a gunman with a military-grade weapon and a high-capacity magazine alienates those rights, obliterates those rights nearly every day in America? It's just common sense that our rights are threatened by an unwarranted amount of military firepower being allowed into the hands of people who are too angry, mentally ill, or unstable to reasonably be given access to that firepower. Why should they have the right, the power, to deny the rest of us the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Why should they have the right, the power, to threaten and kill our children? To me, the most important part of the Constitution is the preamble. It presents the mission of the Constitution, the mission of America. It's also a charge to our elected leaders and to all of us who seek to hold them accountable. It states, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty, to ourselves and our posterity to ordain and establish the Constitution for the United States of America. Today, the ludicrously easy access to weapons of war and high-capacity magazines is clearly disturbing the domestic tranquility, is certainly making us incapable of having a common defense against a hail of rapid-fire bullets, is absolutely harming the general welfare, and by any reasonable amount of thinking is preventing all of us, especially our children, from enjoying the blessings of liberty. All of us who love the Constitution and who love America and the principle it stands for need to see that if we do not change course, the path we are on in America is one in which the only true right we will have left as Americans is an overly fortified right to bear arms, the right to have and use weapons of war against each other. It's a dangerous and civically lopsided place to find ourselves. Our rights to free speech, to practice our religion, to assemble, to attend a concert, or simply shop for groceries. And most of all, the right for our children, our most precious gift, and our most sacred trust as Americans, to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and simply go to school every day in peace and security. They are all at risk. Every other right we cherish as Americans is being held hostage to a misguided and unbalanced interpretation of the right to bear arms. The good news is that, as many speakers have pointed out, a vast majority of Americans, including the vast majority of gun owners, support common sense gun safety solutions. Perhaps the dam is finally breaking, even as the Supreme Court rolled back the clock. Last night, the first meaningful gun safety legislation in a generation passed the Senate, and likely today in the House. It is a major milestone made possible by tremendous pressure and unbearable suffering. But it needs to be just the beginning. Every one of our lives is at stake. Even amidst the unimaginable, excruciating pain of massacre after massacre, we must persevere. We cannot let the seemingly relentless news of new mass shootings numb our will, our sense of outrage, and most of all, our urgency. Americans have united to do hard things before. From the Revolutionary War to the Civil War to the World Wars to the Civil Rights eras, every generation of America has been asked to stand up for what it means to be America and to move our country forward. Our generation's task is to rebalance the rights of responsible gun ownership with all the other rights that we hold dear and frankly are entitled to as Americans. As Lincoln said so powerfully, at another time of grave danger for our country, when we were deeply divided as a country, the dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. As our case is new, we must think anew and act anew. We must disenthrall ourselves, and then we should save our country. So let's do just that. Let's disenthrall ourselves, and let's talk to each other as Americans. That is the powerful example of 24/7, the people's filibuster for gun safety. Let's enact common sense solutions to real-world problems. Let's save our own lives, save the lives of our children and grandchildren, and reclaim our democracy. Thank you.